And welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint. I am your host. With me, James Just, and with me today is El Capitan himself, host of Capital City Radio, Mr. Alexander Vasquez. Alexander, thank you for coming back. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
You know, we've got a couple good stories here right at the top of.
We sure
oh
do.
Man, someone has kicked a hornet's nest. Governor Newsom has ordered California state workers back to the office, and they are not happy.
They are not happy, and they are going to make this the biggest fight of his political career, okay? And no, you don't point your finger at them. You know what? You're already in trouble. And the unions are already saying, they're already claiming that they're going to have bad working conditions, bad working times and everything like that. But the people don't want to do it. The workers themselves don't want to. They don't want to come downtown.
No. Well, if you've got to spend your life kind of half working away from the office, then yeah, of course you're going to complain that you've got to actually go back in and get some work done. I think that's, here's the thing about this. The data is in. Most remote work is not as efficient.
No.
You as an individual may be more efficient, but your team is not. And that's kind of what we're discovering here, is that remote work, if you're an individual, yes, you can be as efficient as you used to be. The problem is your team isn't. And not only that, you lose out on mentorship opportunities, you lose out on communication. There's all kinds of things that are difficult to measure.
Yes.
That you lose out on when you aren't working in an office, when you aren't working around the people who you work with.
Yes, but let's remember, he's the one that closed it.
Yeah.
Okay, he's the one that closed it. They weren't closed I don't think Florida wasn't closed. I don't think Texas was closed. But he stuck his finger in his mouth and said, "Where's the wind going?"
Well, he knows who pays his political bread.
Right.
He knows who butters his political. I'm just mixing my metaphors all over the place. He knows who butters his bread. Right. And it's the employee unions. But now
they're turning on him.
As we see that thing like Doge is actually popular. It's 60% of the country is kind of happy that Doge is kind of going and trying to figure things out.
And now he wants to be Doge Jr.
And now he's trying to be, and we've got another story about how he's trying to do that here in a couple of minutes. But so now he's working on that. Right now he's trying to get his employees back, the laptop class, trying to get back into the office, the bureaucratic class.
And they don't want to go.
No, they don't want to go, but the taxpayers want them to go.
Yes.
Yeah,
and so do the restaurateurs and all the other businesses downtown. But they've already left. I don't know if you've been downtown lately.
I avoid downtown simply because it's slow to get around. It's slow and expensive. So why do I want to go down there?
And it's filthy too, and it smells. I live downtown, so I know, believe me. But the thing about it is that all the good places are gone.
Yeah.
And these people, these state workers who are staying at home, doing their thing, nobody knows exactly what they're doing, okay? When you talk about working outside of the office, the ones that really are more productive are the ones that work in the private sector. But in the public sector, okay, they got a lot of leadway. And so asking them to come back, telling them to come back.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. your DMV teller doesn't get to work from home.
No.
So your janitor doesn't get to work from home.
No.
So it's only the real technical bureaucrat that gets to work from home. The laptop class, the literal laptop class.
Yeah, the laptop. Yeah, I
and,
like that.
The electrician doesn't get to work from home. The plumber doesn't get to work from home. The building inspector doesn't get to work from home. They may not be working, but they don't get to work from home.
Right.
So, so it's only really a subgroup of people who are privileged enough to even have the opportunity to remotely think about working from home.
And these people are kicking and scratching about going back to the office.
4 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For they don't want to come to downtown. They're already saying, they're even using angles like, well, this is going to hurt his climate change project, because now we're going to have to get in our cars and drive from Folsom, drive from Roseville, drive from Elk Grove, and to get into the state capitol.
Well, drive to
what he did before.
Why don't you just drive to the light rail station and take it in like you want to make the rest of us do?
Yeah, and like what?
Take the bus.
What the hell did you guys do before? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And now they had it good for 3-4 years. They probably wish that COVID comes back just so they could stay at home. And now he's saying, no, I want you back in the office now.
Yeah. Well, it's not even now. It's like July.
July. But what if it gets so bad? He says, "Well, what I really meant, and this is when we're going to really find out he wants to be president." He'll say, "I only wanted you back in the month of July. Then you could go in August and go back home and work from your lazy boy."
Yeah, we're going to see how much pull the unions actually have with.
This is the battle.
This is the battle right here. Now, you talked about how governor wants to be little d Doge. So Governor Newsom has launched a homeless accountability website, right? After they've already blown, what is it, $20 billion
$24 billion.
that they can't find or don't know how they spent or all this various stuff. So now they're going to watch an accountability website.
Right.
You know
what?
I don't even know which metaphor to use, analogy to use on this one.
Use this. I want everybody to picture this, okay? We don't need a accountability website. All we have to do is look out our front window because they're still there. The homeless are still on the streets, okay? You want to use things like data and statistics and all this other stuff? No. Every person in California, all they have to do is drive around their neighborhood, drive to their favorite restaurant, drive to the park, whatever the case may be, drive under a freeway, and guess that's your data. That's where the accountability starts and ends.
Yeah, it's the problem with accountability is no one wants to find out, okay, exactly how we got here. Because I remember a couple of years ago where they closed all the last chance motels down on Stockton Boulevard, and magically the next week we have homeless camps.
Right.
Spewing up all over the neighborhood. So when you removed people who were getting by, and now you said you took away their options and said, well, we'll give them services, but they didn't want services. They were getting by on their own. And so now they provided them services, which they actually don't provide. And the whole thing's a mess. We actually created this problem.
Yes, by re-electing Gavin Newsom, number one. But do you really believe that this is really coming from the heart of, no. This is almost like a stage. It's like a rehearsal of what I want to do, like become president or whatever the case may be. And
he's trying to change the political conversation around himself.
Yeah, and so we have Big Doge, Big Elon up in Washington. Now he wants to be small d Newsom in California. And now everything seems like what the Trump administration is doing, he wants to do it better or different with more feeling.
Yeah, well, he wants to try to hit the things that are popular while kind of pretending that he's still the far left progressive. And he's not going to manage to pull that off because those two things are completely opposite.
Right.
He's not going to be able to pull this off. Or people are going to notice, hey, you big hypocrite, you were a big supporter of these things in just a few years ago, and now you're completely the opposite.
Right.
You wanted unaccountable, big, huge bureaucracies, and now you're saying you want the bureaucracy to be accountable. And it's just this, it's not going to work. It's not going to work, except with the Democrat voter base who don't really care.
Well, I mean, he did a terrible job when he went back east and Midwest to campaign for Biden. Nothing came out of that. So this is like really desperate moves, and it shows.
Yeah.
And you're not going to go anywhere with it.
Yeah, he's trying to save his political career, and I don't think there's one to save.
I don't think there's one to save.
But we shall see. We shall see. There's something else that has been going on. Richard Fields has noticed that Jeff Bezos has kind of changed his tune on some things recently. And let's see what he's got to say about this week.
Oh, I love that picture.
Hi, this is Richard Fields with this week's Report from the Fields. Jeff Bezos is, of course, the founder of Amazon and space company Blue Origin. He's also the owner of the Washington Post, which has been a consistently center-left newspaper for decades. Imagine my amazement when I read Bezos' statement that, quote, "We are going to be writing every day in support and defense of two pillars, personal liberties and free markets," end quote. My first thought was, that sounds familiar. Oh yeah, it's similar to Free Minds and Free Markets, the subhead of Reason magazine, the libertarian magazine since its inception. My second thought was, fantastic. That means there are now two major market daily newspapers with a libertarian bent. the newspaper I subscribe to, the Orange County Register, and now the Washington Post. The first clue that something was up was when Bezos refused to let the paper endorse Kamala Harris in last year's presidential campaign, much to the consternation of the Post's editorial staff. But no endorsement meant that there was no endorsement of Trump either. Since the election, he has cozied up to Trump, but hell, most of the tech bros have. Even Mark Zuckerberg, who slavishly followed the Biden administration's censorship diktats on COVID and Biden family corruption. The choice of words is also interesting. Personal liberties and free markets are certainly not the hallmarks of MAGA Republicans. Quite the opposite. Wholesale expulsion of immigrants is a fundamental violation of their personal liberty to live wherever they can find a job and a place to live. And getting rid of DEI programs is good insofar as it eliminates government discrimination, but the way the Trump administration is doing it is extremely mean-spirited and almost certainly firing competent trans people and people of color is discriminatory in and of itself, the old-fashioned kind of discrimination. And tariffs are the opposite of free markets. And the threats to reclaim the Panama Canal, annex Canada, Greenland, and Gaza are horrific violations of the personal liberties of the people who live in those places and the very concept of free markets. There's no question that Bezos is an American entrepreneurial success story. He started Amazon in a garage in Bellevue, Washington. But like Elon Musk and most other multi-billionaires, he has been willing to sell his services to whoever was willing to buy them, including the CIA as customer of Amazon Web Services, the Pentagon for Joint Enterprise Defense Infrastructure, Immigration and Border Control and Customs Enforcement for its recognition surveillance software, and of course, NASA for its Blue Origin contracts. But we libertarians need to welcome erstwhile allies even when they are not as pure as we would like them to be. Elon Musk is doing great work with X and with Doge, while much of the rest of what the Trump administration does is lamentable. If Bezos' opinion pages continue to publish articles critical of authoritarian tendencies of the Trump administration, like a recent piece by Dana Milbank, I'll take that as a sign that Bezos is actually sincere about his small L libertarianism. We shall see. I'm Richard Fields, and that's this week's report from the fields.
Well, I trust Bezos, whether this is real or not, with about as far as I can throw Amazon.
Right.
So, hey, I'll take what we can get, but I don't trust it at all. As we talked about, I think next week, if you are a mass market organization, if you're a mass market company, you don't want to play politics. And I think really getting out of politics and from the kind of staying out of the partisan politics would be a good idea for Bezos on a newspaper. Do I trust it? No, I don't.
No, he has a lot of power, he has a lot of influence, and his service is everywhere. His trademark is everywhere, and it almost seems like, go ahead, who you can do business with. I've already got you programmed to call me to bring you your groceries, to bring you your products, and
to handle your website.
Everything.
Half the world is run by AWS.
Okay.
Right? People don't know half the world is literally run on Amazon Web Services. People don't actually understand that. That's where Bezos actually makes his money.
Right.
It's not Amazon Prime and all that. That breaks even at best. He makes his money on Amazon Web Service. That's where Amazon makes its money, real money at. And people don't understand that. So,
Yeah.
half the world is run on that. So we talk about power.
Yes.
And, we're going to move on to this $20 billion slush fund paid by us taxpayers that happens to kind of go on. Now, we call it a slush fund, and this article calls it a slush fund. Your version of a slush fund may be different than ours, so I'll grant that. But there's $20 billion paid by taxpayers have gone to mostly progressive nonprofits. And this is kind of the problem where we politicized everything. right? It's now you can't just have people who are just feeding the homeless like you used to do, like the churches used to do. Now feeding the homeless is a progressive cause, and this money goes, the money for feeding the homeless gets funneled off into other progressive causes, and it gets refunneled back into the politicians, to advocate for their, for more resources for their cause. And this is how we get these $36 trillion in debt, is because we just don't pay attention where all this money is actually going.
Well, it's just another Ponzi scheme. I've worked with nonprofits for a while, and I even had, I was a former commissioner for the city of Sacramento and Land Preferential Commission, and part of it was going to nonprofits and looking how they operate and everything like that, and where the money was going, and to take ideas to improve production and service. And the first thing they'll tell you is that everything's going fine. Let's go have lunch. You don't need to look at the books. Get out of here, all right? It's too secretive. And a lot of people don't understand that these nonprofits doesn't mean you can't make a profit. A lot of directors and staff that could be their parents and their cousins and everything like that, they get paid very, very well. Is that they get grants, they do out reports, but when you ask them, well, what have you done? Show me the good works that you've done. They can't produce it a lot. And so I've always been leery of that.
Yeah, that's
part
why
of
a lot of these big, huge charities, they actually only get 10-20% actually gets
Right.
to the alleged cause. And so at some point, if only 10%, 20%, maybe even if only half of your money is getting to the alleged cause, that's not the cause.
No.
That's the point, right?
Right.
And there is another problem with this, with all these big federal grants. We're talking about big federal grants. Is these grants to local governments, they breed corruption. If we can move to the next story, Antoine. See, the research is telling us that people are corrupt in order to get these grants.
Yes.
They want these grants so bad that they are willing to bend their morality to get them. And you can understand why, because it's very difficult to operate. The government has so many rules and regulations and on how to raise money and things you can and cannot say and you raise money, especially if you're nonprofits or
Right.
you got some special dispensation. Right? There's so many rules and regulations that it's very easy for someone to go, well, all right, fine, I'll fudge this grant a little bit so I can get it, so we can stay open. And it's very easy for people to start sliding down that.
Yeah, and that slippery slope,
Yeah.
it's there. And this is why I think that you have these nonprofit groups screaming at, and getting a lot of airtime, screaming that we are going to hurt families, we are going to separate families, we are going to see kids dying in the street, we're going to see this. There's always something, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is that you look at the data now, and we still have high crime, high sickness, high unemployment, high homelessness, and all these groups were supposed to help with that, and they're not helping.
Well, and part of the problem is that they're now operating to get grants instead of operating to
Right.
accomplish their mission. And that's very dangerous. And rather than a government saying, hey, these guys are doing a good job, but here's some money to help you go along,
Right.
you've got these grants, now you've got to service the grants. It just makes, and a lot of times these grants pay for one thing and not the other. So they'll pay for things, but not the people to run them, or they'll pay for the people to run the things, but not the actual things.
Right.
And so it's all very complicated.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why people like Doge goes in there and finds millions of dollars going to kind of pointless.
Well, we see it here in Sacramento.
Yeah.
I mean, how much money did the city of Sacramento get from the county or from the state or from the feds? And the first time they get these big blocks of money, and then they give it to the nonprofits for homelessness, nonprofits. And there's like 10 or 15 nonprofit groups out there that deal with homelessness, and they're all fighting for that pie. And I've seen it before, I've seen it personally. That's what the city's supposed to do, not hand it over to somebody else. You're supposed to take care of it. That's what you campaigned on. That's what you got elected on, and you're not doing it.
Yeah, and it'd be one thing if they would hire efficient nonprofits, but they're
Right.
not. They're not hiring efficient nonprofits.
No, they're
They're
not.
hiring inefficient nonprofits. Again, because we go back to because a lot of these nonprofits are really political in nature. They're not mission focused. They have a political focus, a political bent, and instead of I just want to find the best way to feed hungry people.
Right.
Right. They're attached to some political messaging or political meaning, and it becomes a vastly different stew than what we all think it should be.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that one.
So, talk about more wasteful spending. USAID sent millions to Ukraine as a secret slush fund. We talk about this USAID. We've been talking about USAID all over the country
Right.
a lot recently. And part of the problem with this is no one really knew where any of this money was going, what it was being spent on. And a lot of times this money just gets sent over there and nobody knows where it actually went, what it was actually doing, who it went to. And so you call them, those things are in slush funds.
Right.
That's the definition of a slush fund. Here's some money and we're not going to spend it on whatever you want. These sent people for economic development. They were sending influencers to France to participate in fashion shows. Now, if you're going to assist Ukraine's economic development during this time of war,
Right.
shouldn't you be helping them build roads, build factories to build their ammunition? These are really are social media influencers the people we really want to be spending our tax dollars to send to Paris?
Yeah, well, I think the big thing here is that I think Ukraine should either win this war or lose it, before we start sending any kind of money like this.
Well, they're not going to allow Ukraine, because there's only one way you can win the war is to have actually Moscow under threat.
Right.
And no one's going to allow them to do that. So there's no chance that Ukraine can actually win the war. So
Right.
the best they can have is a settlement. That's it. That's the best Ukraine can realistically hope for, because Europe is not going to let them go march on Russia. They're too chicken.
Right.
And so they're never going to be able to go past their own borders. Not really.
I'm wondering how they're going to rebuild Ukraine. I'm looking at, okay, are we going to have a Trump Tower in Ukraine now, along with Gaza? I mean,
Well,
this is getting out of hand.
Yeah, well-
Everything's getting out of hand here.
If Ukraine could be rebuilt relatively quickly if you actually allowed the free market to operate, but we know that's not going to happen.
No.
It's just, it's not something that's in the cards. All right, let's get through this really quickly. Well, the FDA listened to the evidence on e-cigarettes. So what is happening here is the FDA wants to kind of ban e-cigarettes because they're bad for your health,
Right.
and which no one's going to disagree that that nicotine is bad for you, right?
Right.
We're all going to agree with that. The problem is what you're going to create is a black market on either e-cigarettes or cigarettes.
Right.
People are going to go back to old-fashioned smoking. And here's the thing. I was talking to some young people earlier this week. They already view vaping as kind of, it's no longer socially acceptable as it was 5 years ago.
They got tired of it. They got
Yeah,
bored.
they got tired of it. And he said,
Right.
they all have other things they want to do now. So the FDA doesn't need to be in this.
Right.
The FDA, California, your local government who's trying to ban flavored e-cigarettes now here in Sacramento. I think they banned
Yes.
flavored e-cigarettes. You don't need to be involved. Nature took its course.
It did. And the thing about it is, like, I smoke cigars, and there's some cigar stores that I particularly go to, and they're expensive cigars because I like expensive cigars. But the thing about it is that they were going to be banned at one point because they were flavored, because sometimes you have cognac in them and brandy. But the thing about it is that at the same token, they're letting all these marijuana dispensaries open all over Sacramento. And the thing is that anything that goes down your lungs that's supposed to not be there,
Yeah.
and you doing it 2-3 times a day,
Breathing a campfire too often is not
Yes.
good. Just standing around a campfire
Right.
too far is not good for you.
Right.
Okay? It's just not. Yeah. And the fact, these are the same group of people. Remember, this was Biden's FDA that was kind of pulling this. So I don't
Right.
think Trump's FDA will follow through. I was kind of suspecting they're not going to ban them just
Right.
because Trump's not I just don't think they are. But so many places locally have. But like you said, marijuana is now legal, and these are the same group of people who want all these drugs to be legal. Now, I'm not one who says drugs should be illegal.
Right.
I'm not necessarily saying all of them should be legal either. There's a
Right.
difference between something being illegal and something being legal.
Right.
But still, it doesn't make any sense that the same group of people who wants us to be able to inject yourselves with methadone and heroin
Right.
as legally is saying, well, you can't use a vape pen.
Yeah.
There's a disconnect there.
This is like stupid corruption in its purest form.
Or is it just a bureaucrats doing something because they have nothing else to do?
And you wonder why Doge is so
Popular.
threatening and popular.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to move on, Alex, because we wanted to get this last one in.
Oh, this one's going to tear me up.
Back in Pennsylvania last week,
of all places.
authorities confiscated a beloved deer that a woman raised as a pet.
Oh, look at that. Is that
when she tried to get in the way, they arrested her because she tried to interfere with the animal control taking the. So they arrested her. She got arrested. Now here's the thing. This is where it gets even worse. They rescued this. They found this deer. It had been abandoned by her mother, and so they took care of the deer. They raised it. It's been like 2 years old now, and it's been raised by this lady and her neighbor. And the neighbors. The neighbors are all cool with this, but of course somebody found out, and animal control found out. And here's the thing: if that deer had been born in captivity, they'd have been perfectly fine. But because they found that deer in nature, rescued it from dying or from being eaten by a predator, and took care of it, now it's against the law, and they're going to end up euthanizing this thing.
Because it was touched by humans.
Because it was, yes. But if it had been born in captivity, that she could have raised it.
Right.
So, and it's not like they're in the inner city, and they're kind of in a rural area, kind of like what we discussed before the show. It's kind of like Rio Linda.
Yeah.
And so there's no one was complaining except some bureaucrat decided, well, you violated some rule, arbitrary rule, and so now we're going to, take away your pet, destroy a community, upset a community. It's just.
And then they're going to knock off the deer anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't you let the deer live? Let the woman feed it and her neighbor feed it. Let them take care of it. And then when it gets old enough, I'm sure the deer's going to take off anyway, at some point. Or you just throw it on the grill. And it's venison burgers for everybody.
Or you have a deer for a pet.
Yes, you have a deer for a pet.
If you have the space, why can't you have a deer?
I don't know why you wanted one, but it's what the hell.
Why can't you have a deer for a pet? We have all kinds of other weird things for pets.
Right. But so much for the Good Samaritan.
Yeah.
Okay. She's doing something that's very helpful, very beneficial. Everybody's happy. The deer's happy. She's happy.
The deer's happy. Her neighbors are happy.
The deer's happy. And like I said, leave Bambi alone. Leave these two women alone, and forget about it.
All right, well, Alex, we are out of here. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Please remember to love everybody and have a great night.
Even as a deer.
Even as a deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.